E aí, professor, você já estudou sua lição? Então, are you ready to study our English lesson? E hoje nós vamos estudar a lição 6 em inglês. Até combinou, né? Nós vamos estudar uma lição importantíssima que fala sobre o sumo sacerdote, o papel de Cristo como sumo sacerdote. E para isso, eu gostaria de convidar aqui o nosso querido amigo Arthur. Arthur, seja bem-vindo!
Obrigado, feliz sábado, pessoal. Muito legal estar aqui para mais uma semana. Agora lição 6.
Praticamente a metade desse trimestre, né?
Pois é, já na metade dessa lição, já está passando rápido.
Muito rápido. Muito bem. Vamos então começar com uma oração em português e depois vamos apresentar a lição 6 em inglês. Beleza? Arthur, você pode orar conosco?
Com certeza. Oremos. Senhor, eu te louvo, eu te agradeço por mais uma oportunidade de estudarmos a lição em inglês. Te agradeço porque o Senhor esteve com a gente durante essa semana. Peço para que a tua companhia continue com a gente, mas em especial peço para que durante esse estudo o Senhor abra as nossas mentes, abra os nossos olhos e ensina, fala ao nosso coração. É o que eu te peço em nome de Jesus. Amém.
Amém. Well. Are you ready? So please type on our chat. Digite aí no chat. Talk to us. Where are you from? What is your church? Right? De onde você está falando? Qual é a sua igreja? Ok? So, let's study the first display is our memory text in Hebrews chapter 7:26. It says, "For such a high priest was fitting for us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separated from sinners, and has become higher than the heavens." So there are 5 characteristics about Jesus here, and we will study it at Thursday's lesson, right? So in Sabbath, our introduction shows us or presents us the problem of sin. Sin is our big problem. Sin implied the corruption of our nature. This corruption brought us misunderstanding about the nature of God. Our corrupted nature separated us from God as two magnets in wrong orientation repel each other. Sin cannot exist in the presence of the Lord. And we will study Hebrews 5 and 7 to understand Jesus' priesthood and the solution for the sin. So, in português, vocês perceberam que eu fiz uma introdução falando sobre o pecado. Em inglês, sin é pecado. Então, sin implica na corrupção da nossa natureza. E o pecado nos separa de Deus. O pecado não pode existir na presença de Deus. Então, nós vamos estudar Hebreus 5 e 7 para ver como o sacerdócio de Jesus traz a solução para estes problemas. So, are you ready, Arthur, to Sunday's lesson? Priest on behalf of human being. How this lesson help us? The first question talks about Hebrews 5 and verses 1 to 10. And the question says, we should study Hebrews 5 and answer what is the role of the priesthood and how Jesus fulfilled that role. So after you read about this passage, let's talk about the basic purpose, basic role of a priest or Levitical priesthood. The basic purpose of priesthood was to mediate between sinful people and God. Priests were appointed by God in order to minister in behalf of human beings. Therefore, They needed to be merciful and understanding of human weakness. In Hebrews 5:6, God appointed Jesus as the high priest. In the verses 7 and 8, Jesus understands us because he also suffered. In verse 3, Jesus did not offer sacrifices for his own sins. In verse 7, Jesus offered his praise to one who was able to save him from death and was hurt. And in verse 8, Jesus learned obedience through what he suffered. So, what is the import? So, in português, right? Nós estamos vendo na lição de domingo que o propósito básico do sacerdote era apresentar as ofertas, ser um mediador entre o povo pecador e Deus. Então, o sacerdote era apontado por Deus e, portanto, ele conhecia, ele precisava conhecer o sofrimento daquele povo para poder oferecer, né, ser o mediador. E nós estamos vendo todas essas passagens que mostram que Jesus, ele é o mediador. Mas existe uma coisa curiosa na lição de domingo. Agora vamos falar em inglês sobre obediência e sofrimento. Well, obedience. Obedience was new to Jesus, not because he was disobedient, but because he was God. As sovereign over the universe, Jesus did not obey anyone. Instead, everyone obeyed him. Sufferings. Jesus' suffering and death on the cross are an essential part of his priestly ministry. This is the key. Suffering did not perfect Jesus in the sense that he improved morally or ethically. Sufferings did not make him merciful. What Hebrews means is that it was through sufferings that the reality of Jesus' brotherly love, authenticity of his human nature, depth of his submission made him perfect in the sense that qualify him as our high priest. So to finish Sunday's lesson, his life of perfect obedience and his death on the cross constitute the sacrificial offering that Jesus present before the Father as our priest. Em português, o sofrimento e a obediência foram tratados aqui na lição de domingo. A obediência, Jesus foi obediente não porque ele era desobediente, mas como um soberano sobre o universo. Ele não obedecia às pessoas, as pessoas o obedeciam. Sofrimento. O sofrimento não fez dele algo mais puro ou misericordioso. Ele sempre foi puro e misericordioso. O que Hebreus está querendo dizer é que os sofrimentos autenticaram sua natureza humana, a sua proximidade como irmão de um ser humano, nós, no caso, e a profundidade de sua submissão a Deus. Assim, terminando a lição de domingo, a sua vida de perfeita obediência e morte na cruz constitui o sacrifício oferecido diante do Pai como o nosso sacerdote. Do you understand? Vocês entenderam? So, let's go on. Monday's lesson, according to the order of Melchizedek. Melchizedek was both a king and a priest. He has not father, mother, beginning, or end. Christ, he was both a king and a priest. However, Jesus was sinless, according to Hebrews 7, 26, 28. Jesus is not Melchizedek or same Melchizedek. Jesus is likeness Melchizedek. The silence regarding the origin of Melchizedek reveals the origin of Jesus, eternal, right? So the genealogy to build this typology or a symbol for Jesus is a way to we understand the role of Jesus as our priest likeness Melchizedek, right? So this is the first part of our lesson, Sunday, Monday, and now I like to introduce Arthur to the next lesson, Tuesday and with Wednesday's lesson. Please, Arthur.
Uh, uh, it's very interesting you just mentioned Melchizedek. The lesson makes this transition between Mondays and Tuesdays in a very, very nice way. So Tuesday's lesson is called An Effective Priest. And by reading Hebrews 7, we're reminded about the function of the Levitical priesthood. The sons of Levi were chosen to attend the temple and to serve God in his temple, offering God's people's sacrifices. They were the mediators between God and the Israelites. But just as the sacrifice of animals could not cleanse the conscience of the sinner, the Levitical priests could never perfectly fulfill the role of mediators. And that's why we had, through God, a priest to the likeness of Melchizedek introduced to us. Just like the other tribes of Israel, the Levites were sinful humans. That's why there was a need for a change. Someone different, someone accordingly to the order of Melchizedek. That should be humanity's true and perfect priest, someone not like what we've seen up until now. It should be someone different. Jesus came to change these roles of a priest after another, and all of them being sinners, just like us. He was a different kind of priest. He was the effective priest. The Levitical priests were images that pointed to him, the perfect one. As the lesson's author puts it, now that Jesus has come and offered a perfect sacrifice, the law of animal sacrifices also has been put aside. As a result of the new covenant and the fuller revelation of the plan of salvation. So when we think about the endless number of animals that were offered as sacrifices, and even the endless numbers of priests the God's people had throughout history, none of the sacrifices and also none of the priests were enough to save us. But it is because Jesus came following a different pattern that we now have a true Savior, a perfect mediator, and an effective priest. That's Tuesday's lesson. And I would actually like to just dive right into Wednesday's lesson because it follows the same train of thought very nicely. Wednesday's lesson is called An Eternal Priest. We can be certain of this salvation following this different pattern we have been given in Jesus because of his unsurpassable ministry, not accordingly to the Levitical priesthood. His life being indestructible makes his ministry eternal. He saves completely, eternally, and to the uttermost. His work is total and final. There's nothing left for us to do or for other priests to do. And anyone can do more and add to his work, not even myself or a Levitical or some other kind of priest. And anyone can change or undo what he has already done. We cannot take away what he has already established. The oath God made that established the Son as a priest because of Jesus' eternity is forever binding. As Wednesday's lesson explains it, a person who stood in surety or guarantee of another was liable to the same penalties as the person for whom he stood in surety, including death. Yet the Father established Jesus as a guarantee to us that he will not default on his promises. The idea is that Jesus is our priest forever, our salvation forever, and our guarantee forever. Ever since his ministry began and eternally ever after, we are safe under his ministry because unlike any of the Levitical priests, Jesus's life is indestructible. His work cannot change, cannot be changed. He has no sin. He is perfect, and he is everlasting. And that's what brings us this feeling of being safe under his works, under his ministry, because it's not because of me, and it's not because of other humans that are working as mediators. I am saved, you are saved, we all are saved because Jesus, being eternal, offered himself as sacrifice and is and will always be our priest. That is both Tuesday's and Wednesday's lesson.
So nice. Thank you very much. This is an effective priest, Christ for us, right? In português. Pessoal, vocês entenderam?
Pastor,
Existe.
rapidinho, a gente não consegue te ver.
Oh! Agora, poxa vida, eu tô falando aqui, não saía aqui a imagem. Obrigado, Arthur, obrigado. Existe uma efetividade no papel de Cristo como nosso sacerdote, certo? So, in English, Arthur, are you ready to Thursday's lesson? All right. So, let me display this note. On Thursday's lesson, we study about the sinless priest or the analysis of memory text, because this lesson analyzes the memory text. What are the 5 characteristics of Jesus in Hebrews 7:26? Well, if we read again this verse, for such a high priest was fitting for us, who is holy, harmless, or undefiled, depends of your version. Harmless, undefiled, separated from sinners, and has become higher than the heavens, or exalted above the heavens. There are many aspects to study here, but we must remember that he is our example. He shows us how to run the race of life. Hebrews 12 and verse 1 to 4. As a holy aspect or characteristic means that Jesus was without fault in relationship to God. Undefiled and pure means that he remained pure and untouched by evil despite being tempted in all points. Jesus' perfect sinlessness is important for his priesthood. The Old Covenant stipulated that sacrificial victims had to be without blemish to be acceptable to God. Jesus' perfect obedience during his earthly life made it possible for him to offer himself as an acceptable sacrifice to God. And Jesus is separated from sinners means that he ascended to heaven. The Greek verb tense suggests that this is a present state for Jesus, which began at a specific point in time. So Jesus also is separated from sinners in that he was perfectly sinless and exalted above the heavens. It means that Jesus has been exalted above everything there is, and therefore he is one with God. In the Psalms, God is the one who exalted above the heavens. So there are many reasons to follow Jesus as our priest or model. We must follow him. So this is our lesson, the sixth lesson, and I like to thank Arthur for this participating. Thanks, Arthur. Em
Thank you.
português,
Great to be here.
A lição de quinta-feira, então, falou que Jesus ele é o nosso perfeito modelo, é uma análise, né, praticamente do verso para memorizar. E eu toquei aqui em 5 pontos, né? Tentei ser breve. Ele é santo, sem nenhuma mácula, ele é puro, ele é separado dos pecadores e exaltado acima dos céus. E aí nós falamos sobre essas características para ele ser, então, um exemplo para nós o seguirmos. Arthur, podemos encerrar a nossa lição?
Podemos sim.
Muito bem. Pessoal, muito obrigado. Um beijo. A gente se vê no próximo sábado. And remember, I study the lesson.
Do you?